Hello and welcome to Books of Blood. My name is John, and today I'm going to be bringing you some recommendations for the Halloween Creature Feature Reading Extravaganza. Now, to make this go by as quickly as possible, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you the name of each challenge, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to recommend 3 books. I'm going to read the synopsis of each of those books if the synopsis is available to me. And then I'll move on to the next one and the next, and hopefully we can get through this pretty quick. So that being said, the first challenge is to read a vampire novel written by a female author. So for the first book, I've chosen Interview with the Vampire. Now, I don't have a synopsis for Interview with the Vampire. In fact, I don't actually have a copy of Interview with the Vampire. I read this a long time ago. I loved it, and so that's why I'm recommending it. But basically, it is about just what it says. It is a 400-year-old vampire, maybe older, who is being interviewed by a human interviewer, and he's telling his life story. From the time before he was a vampire and to the time he was bitten and to the time after he became a vampire and his life after that, or undeath after that, so to speak. So that is Interview with a Vampire, and that's of course by Anne Rice, and is the first in a long series of books called The Vampire Chronicles. Alright, so next up I've got Black Ambrosia by Elizabeth Engstrom. Love that cover. Angelina is a killer. You never know it to look at her until you look into her eyes. Angelina doesn't kill out of hatred or fear. She kills out of love, bringing solace to her victims, guided by the seductive voice that speaks only to her. Angelina offers you eternal peace at the cost of your soul. And that is Black Ambrosia by Elizabeth Engstrom. And that's one of those where you're not 100% sure if she is a vampire or not. I think she was. But it's kind of one of those where you're like, is she or isn't she kind of books. But it's fantastic. I loved it. All right, next up I've got Sunglasses After Dark. And this is the first in the Sonia Blue series by Nancy A. Collins. She could lead a man to heaven and deliver him to hell. A beautiful vampire of consummate, immortal power. Lust beyond the warmth of blood. Revenge beyond desire. The world lay at her feet. The extraordinary power of unnatural life breathes behind Sunglasses After Dark. And that's by Nancy A. Collins. All right, so the next challenge is to read a werewolf book, with the word wolf or moon in the title. And you can also use the word wolves or werewolves, or you can use the word werewolf, because they are wolves and wolf and werewolves and all that are variations of the same word. So for the first one, I'm picking The Wolfman by Nicholas Picaro. I've talked about this book on my channel before. I absolutely love it. Marlo Higgins has had a hard life. Since being dishonorably discharged after a tour in Vietnam, he's been in and out of prison, moving from town to town, going wherever the wind takes him. He can't stay in one place too long. Every full moon, he kills someone. Excuse me, my voice jumped just a little bit. I apologize for that. For years, he struggled with this affliction until he found a way to use this unfortunate curse for good. He kills only really bad people. Settling at last in the small town of Evelyn, Higgins works at a local restaurant and even has a friend, Daniel Pierce, one of Evelyn's 2 police detectives. One night everything changes. It turns out Marlo Higgins isn't the only monster lurking in the area. A fiendish serial killer known as the Rose Killer is brutally murdering young girls all around the county. Higgins targets the killer as his next victim, but on the night of the full moon, things go drastically wrong. And that is The Wolfman by Nicholas Picaro. And this is actually the only book this guy ever wrote. It's the first and only book. He was killed in the line of duty as an auxiliary police officer. And that really saddens me, because I would have loved to have seen what this guy could have come up with next. Because this is just a fantastic book. Next up, I've got When the Autumn Moon is Bright by Brian Easton. This is the first book in the autobiography of a werewolf hunter series. There are 3 books in the series, and then there's a prequel trilogy that's going to be coming out. The first book is already out. Anyway, let's go ahead here. Sylvester Logan James knows what it is to be haunted. His mother died giving him life. His father was butchered by a werewolf before his eyes on a night when the full moon changed the world. He should have been too young for hate, but he grew old on its milk. He should have been too innocent for guilt, but it turned him to stone. There's no solace for a man in a futile war. Sylvester learned to live by brandishing his vendetta into the outlands of the occult. Now his hatred has become a monster all its own, robbing him of conscience and conviction as surely as the beast bite. Options are scarce and time is short for Sylvester to salvage what remains of his fractured soul. It takes more than silver bullets to kill a werewolf. And that is When the Autumn Moon is Bright. And then finally, for read a book with the word wolf or moon in the title, I have chosen Wolf Hunt by Jeff Strand. I don't have the synopsis for this, but it's basically about these 2 guys, 2 mafia guys, that are given the task of tracking down and bringing back this fella who just happens to be a werewolf. And these 2 mafia guys are so far over their head that it's absolutely hilarious. So that is Wolf Hunt by Jeff Strand. All right, so now moving on. The next challenge is to read a book featuring a dead or undead character. It could be a ghost, it could be a vampire, it could be a zombie, a demon. As long as it is dead or undead, so to speak. Vampire too, also vampire. Then it fits the challenge. So for that, I've chosen a ghost story, a zombie story, and a demon story. So for the ghost story, I'm choosing The Ghosts of Sleeth by James Herbert. Now, this is the second book in the Ash trilogy. The first one is Haunted, and the third one is Ash. I don't think you have to read the 3 books one right after the other to understand what is going on. I actually read this one out of order before I read the first one, and it's its own separate story. Now you do get flashback, they do talk about the events of the first book, but you don't have to know what's going on in the first book to know what's going on in this book. Can a ghost haunt a ghost? Can the dead reach out and touch the living? Can ancient evil be made manifest? These are the questions that confront investigator David Ash when he is sent to the picturesque village of Sleeth in the Chiltern Hills to look into mysterious reports of mass hauntings. What he discovers is a terrified community gripped by horrors and terrorized by ghosts from the ancient village's long history. As each dark secret is unveiled and terrible malign forces are unleashed, he will fear for his very sanity. And that is The Ghost of Sleeth by James Herbert. All right, for my zombie pick, I have gone with Monster Island by David Wellington. And this is the first book in a series. The second one is called Monster Nation, and the third one is called Monster Planet. It's 1 month after a global disaster. The most developed nations of the world have fallen to the shambling zombie masses. Only a few pockets of humanity survive. In New York City, the dead walk the streets driven by an insatiable hunger for all things living. From the other side of the planet, a small but heavily armed group of schoolgirls turned soldiers comes in search of desperately needed medicine, with a former UN weapons inspector as their local guide. They think they are prepared for anything. On Monster Island, they will find that there is something worse even than undeath. And that is Monster Island by David Wellington. And for my demon pick, I'm going to go with The Merciless by Danielle Vega. And again, this is the first in a series. I think there are 4 books. Merciless 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is the first one. And it's the only one I've read. I'm not really big into young adult novels, but I gave this one a shot and I did enjoy it. Brooklyn Stevens sits in a pool of her own blood, tied up and gagged. No one outside of these dark basement walls knows she's here. No one can hear her scream. Sophia Flores knows she shouldn't have gotten involved. When she befriended the popular girls on her first day at school, she admired their perfect hair and their good girl ways. They said they wanted to save Brooklyn. They wanted to help her. Sophia didn't realize they believed Brooklyn was possessed. Now Sophia's new friends are performing an exorcism on Brooklyn, but their idea of an exorcism is closer to torture than salvation. And that is The Merciless by Danielle Vega. And that is one paint cover. Alright, so the next prompt or the next challenge is to read a book featuring a cryptid or cryptozoological creature. It could be Bigfoot, Chupacabra, Sasquatch. Well, Sasquatch and Bigfoot are the same. The Yeti, Loch Ness Monster, the Mothman, anything. If you're not 100% sure if it exists, then it probably fits into the category. So the first book that I'm going to mention, it's going to pop up on the screen, is Bigfoot Wars by Eric S. Brown. And this is another one of those in a long series. I've read probably 6 or 7 of these books in this series, and they are all absolutely wild. They are romps, man. They are so much fun because these are not your Bigfoot or Sasquatch that run away when they see humans. They don't try to avoid humans. Oh no, these are Bigfoot or Sasquatch that will literally rip you limb from limb. And this is just a book of absolute gory fun. All right, if this is something that's up your alley, I cannot recommend these books enough. So yeah, Bigfoot War by Eric S. Brown. All right, so the next one up is The Loch. And you can pretty well guess what this one's going to be about. Loch Ness holds secrets, ancient and deadly. Does a monster inhabit its depths, or is it just myth? Why, after thousands of reported sightings and dozens of expeditions, is there still no hard evidence? Marine biologist Zachary Wallace knows, but the shock of his near drowning as a child on Loch Ness has buried all memories of the incident. Now a near-death experience suffered while on expedition in the Sargasso Sea has caused these long-forgotten memories to resurface. Haunted by vivid night terrors, stricken by a sudden fear of the water, Zach finds he can no longer function as a scientist. Unable to cope, his career all but over, he stumbles down a path of self-destruction until he receives contact from his estranged father, a man he has not seen since his parents divorced and he left Scotland as a boy. Angus Wallace, a wily Highlander who never worked an honest day in his life, is on trial for murdering his business partner. Only Zachary can prove his innocence, if he is innocent, but to do so means confronting the nightmare that nearly killed him 17 years earlier. Incorporating the latest research and new evidence that leads to real answers concerning the monster's identity, best-selling author Steve Alton weaves a tale of horror about the most publicized and controversial creature ever to exist. And that is The Loch by Steve Alton. And finally, for the read a book featuring a cryptid or cryptozoological creature, I'm going to go with The Mothman Prophecies by John Keel. And it's been a long time since I've read this book, but I remember that it fascinated me. All right. And then, of course, the movie came out with Richard Gere, and I thought they did a really good job with the movie. So that's kind of why I'm recommending the book also. If you've seen the movie and you're interested in more, then that's why I'm recommending the book. And of course it is about the cryptozoological creature that was spotted in this town. I believe it was Point Pleasant, Virginia. And also about the bridge collapse that occurred. And of course a lot of people blame this particular cryptid on this bridge collapse. I think it killed like 30 or 40 people. I don't remember the exact amount. So anyway, that is The Mothman Prophecies by John Keel. All right, and finally, I have got read a book of Lovecraftian or cosmic horror written by an author of color. Or if you prefer, you can say person of color also, but I'm just going to say author of color. So the first book I'm going to recommend is The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor Laval. Okay. Charles Thomas Tester hustles to put food on the table, to keep the roof over his father's head. From Harlem to Flushing Meadows to Red Hook, he knows what magic a suit can cast, the invisibility a guitar case can provide, and the curse written on his skin that attracts the eyes of wealthy white folks and their cops. But when he delivers an occult book to a reclusive sorceress in the heart of Queens, Tom opens the door to a deeper realm of magic and earns the attention of things best left sleeping. A storm that might swallow the world is building in Brooklyn. Will Black Tom live to see it break? And that is the Ballad of Black Tom by Victor Laval. All right, so the next two books, one thing I did find that was kind of hard to do, it's kind of hard to find books of cosmic horror that are written by authors of color. I started to mention Lovecraft Country, but Lovecraft Country is actually written by a white man, but it is told from the perspective or point of view of a black man. I started to mention that one, but I thought, no, that would be cheating. And yes, I know I am mentioning it, but I'm basically mentioning it only in passing because I do want to keep this to where it is authors of color. So with that, I've got one that I actually have not read myself. In fact, the next two books that I've got here, I haven't read, but I've heard so many good things about them. So this is kind of me recommending them to you after they were recommended to me. So the first one is a short story collection, all by women authors, and all books of Lovecraftian or cosmic horror. And this is She Walks in Shadows, and it is edited by Sylvia Garcia Moreno and Paula R. Stiles. So there's that one. And then finally, I've got Meddling Kids by Edgar Cantero. I'm not 100% sure what this book is about. Like I said, I haven't read it yet, but I've heard a lot of good things about it. So again, this is me recommending it to you. But from what I understand, Meddling Kids is pretty much Scooby-Doo meets Cthulhu sort of thing, or Scooby-Doo meets cosmic horror sort of thing. So there you go. Those are my recommendations for the challenges for the Halloween Creature Feature Reading Extravaganza. Now, this is co-hosted by Jason White of Jason's Weird Reads. I'm not 100% certain, but I'm pretty sure that Jason is also going to do a recommendations video for this. And so if you would, head over to his channel if you get a chance and check out his recommendations. That's going to do it for me. Thank you guys for watching. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Excuse me. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and bye-bye.